See, these shots are the wrong type of injection. Come to find out that ARs are the disease. We died before the age of COVID-19. All this violence goes viral over social media. We killed that one.
Yeah, we did that one.
Yeah, y'all love those bars.
Yeah.
Hey, you're here with
Jeremiah.
Haley,
And Noah.
and you're watching The Cure a year later. I think that my inspiration for writing this piece was really just like our stories and just really bringing them together to form something that was really dope and that we could stand behind and hopefully validate the experiences of other Chicago kids as well.
Facts.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think just, being able to tell the individual stories of so many kids around the city in so many different neighborhoods and how each person has their own individual story, but we found common ground and really be able to express that for a lot of people who don't really have that voice for themselves.
What was the inspiration for me? Understanding the value of life. Why was no one checking my IV like the police check my ID? I used to have a car, I used to drive around, and I used to be pulled over like literally 3 times a week, like with me and my friends in the car, like just driving to go McDonald's or anything. I definitely talked to some of my white friends, and they're like, man, I only get pulled over 2 times a year. I'm like, that's crazy. And also like our healthcare system, I've been in hospitals where people are literally bleeding and not being taken care of.
So, thinking about gun violence as a pandemic, right? When we wrote this piece, it was last March. And we had just started quarantine. None of us had any clue, like, how this was going to go and how we were going to be able to... Yeah, it was shutdown time. Like, we were in the house. And we didn't know... Yeah, we didn't know what it would look like to create a piece virtually. But we saw so many parallels between the pandemic that we were going through and the pandemic that is gun violence, and we were able, that we've been through for all of our lives.
The similarities between the pandemic and gun violence for me is the mental stress that it creates, also the major impact it has on our communities. Like, it's an in-your-face thing every day.
I just want to make sure that y'all caught, we died before the age of COVID-19. Yeah. I felt like when we were writing that, we were like, oh, but now, like, playing it back even a year later, it's still like, oh, because, like, the age of COVID-19 is a thing. Like, when we look at this time in history books, it's going to be the age of COVID-19, but then also the age of 19, and thinking about, like, some people don't make it to their 20s. Some people don't get to have those formative years.
Because there's no vaccine for systematic oppression, no diagnosis for mama's tears and depression. I chose this couplet because this really creates a great image of how gun violence doesn't only affect people in the streets and in the violence, but the people who are surrounded by them, whether that be their family, their friends, their aunts and uncles. People are always taking the toll of losing someone to their heart, and I think that's kind of unhighlighted. Like, yes, people lose their lives, but the people around them have to carry the weight of losing someone close to them.
I think that violence spreads because of a lack of resources. I think that desperation and violence go hand in hand. When people don't have something, they're going to get it. You know what I mean? And so I don't think that so much of the violence that we see in our communities is just random. It's very, very systemic and intentional, and people just need resources and time and care, and they're not getting that, and so they're going to take it by other means, which is how we see violence spreading in our community.
Redlining is like literally like creating these really big natural looking barriers like expressways, like railroads, like, just different things to really separate communities. And I also think when you put so many birds in one cage, none of them can fly.
It's hard to care for our health when we don't have access to health care. This line was just really like mind-blowing for me when we wrote it, because we want minorities and people of color to focus on all of these different things and bettering themselves, but they don't have the basic needs. They don't have access to healthcare, food, security, right? They're living paycheck to paycheck trying to figure out how they're going to feed their family, yet we want them to better themselves in all of these different ways. So I think that before we have those expectations of people, we need to lay the groundwork to make sure that they can support themselves.
Thank you guys for breaking down these lines with us and tuning in to The Cure
A year later.